Hello, this is Angela Anderson. Thanks for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to paint an ocean sunset using acrylic paints. We'll be doing a dock and a cabana and a palm tree in silhouette. If you're just a beginner and you don't want to do the more difficult parts of this painting, you could probably just leave out the cabana and the dock and do the palm tree, and that would be a little bit easier. I sketched out my painting a little bit beforehand just to kind of see where I wanted to place everything. And then I'm going to get started using an 11 by 14 inch canvas and some regular school chalk, and I'm just making a mark halfway along my canvas, and then about a thumb width above that I'm going to make a line all the way across for my horizon line. Don't worry if it's not perfect because we'll be taping this off later after we do our sky. I like to use chalk because it's erasable, so if you make a mistake, you don't have to worry about it. I'm going to start out with our sun, and I've got some white here. I'm just going to do my sun a little bit off center, so it'll be, if this is the middle mark, it'll be just off to one side of the middle. I'm going to start with white in the center, and then I'm going to do a layer of cadmium yellow light around that. I'm just lightly brushing over those edges. Not putting down too much paint. And I'm going to mix the lemon yellow, or the cadmium yellow light with cadmium yellow medium, and then put that around. A little bit more water. I'm just going to lay on my color, working around in a circular motion. Add a little bit more of that lemon or that cadmium yellow light. There, closer to the sun. Okay, and then I'm going to pick up a little bit of the cadmium orange and go over the top. Overlap just a little bit. I'm blending a little bit of that cadmium yellow into it. And then I'm just going to blend over the top of what I've already painted just a little bit to blend it as I work my way out. Go over the top of your horizon line so we don't have to worry about that later. We'll cover over anything that we get on the water. Got the cadmium yellow and cadmium orange mixture, and then moving to straight cadmium orange. Just working back and forth and blending it as I go. I've got heavy body acrylics that I'm using. If you have craft acrylics, those will work too. Might have to work a little bit faster with craft acrylics because they tend to dry faster. So if you get a little bit too much color in one spot, don't worry about that. We can go back over that later. I'm going to go ahead and wipe off all of my paint and pick some of my yellow back up and just go back over that. And it'll just blend it right back out. See? Okay, now I'm going to start working in some I think I'm going to use Quinacridone Magenta with that Cadmium Orange. I had a Cadmium Red Light there, but I don't think I'm going to use that. I think I'm just going to go straight to the Quinacridone Magenta. I want to leave a little bit of room for some pink. I don't want it to go too red. Work some of that in over here. Pick up the orange to blend over that transition area. If you don't have cadmium orange, you could use cadmium red with some cadmium yellow and mix those two together to get a similar color. Just use what you've got. You've got get some yellow in here to go over this transition right there where it's a little bit I'm going to clean out my brush. Pick up some more of my cadmium yellow. Just blend over that edge there where it was starting to encroach in my yellow area. I'm going to pick up some of my cadmium yellow light and do the same thing. Go a little bit over. Just make sure my center stays nice and bright. Pick up a little bit of white and work that back into my yellow. I don't want my center to be perfectly white, so I do want a little bit of that cadmium yellow light to sort of seep into the color around the edges. Now my paint is still wet at this point, but if your paint had started to dry, it'll start to feel sticky when you brush over it, and it could lift your color. So just make sure that if that happens, go ahead and dry your paint off with a hair dryer or wait for it to dry, and then you can do this layering over the top of it. But you don't want to work with paint, especially with acrylic paints. Once they start to dry, they start to get tacky. They bond to one another, and so the molecules kind of start to stick to anything that's nearby, which if you're brushing over them with the brush will be your brush, and they will stick to your brush and pull it right off the canvas. You don't want that. Okay, so I'm just working over these edges. I'm going back over some of these orange areas with some of my cadmium yellow mixtures, just to kind of soften up those transitions. I'm liking that. That's really good. So let's go ahead and work in some of this Quinacridone Magenta now. I've mixed it with some white here. I'm just going to use that along these edges. I still had some of that yellow on my brush, so it's made it kind of a soft salmon pink color. It's a good sunset color. Work some in over here. And if you don't have this magenta, you could use a alizarin crimson is a red that's kind of similar to Quinacridone Magenta. You could even use cadmium red and just add a little bit of white to it, and maybe a little bit of orange or yellow to it here in this case, since we're making it a little more orange. This side will have a little bit more of the dark magenta. Just a little bit farther away from the sun. As farther away from the sun, it'll get a little bit brighter, darker, brighter. I'm going to clean out my brush. I'm going to start to work on some of these transition areas here. So I'm going to grab some of that Cadmium Orange and just blend over the top of that transition area and streak in some of that orange. Trying to keep this circular motion. So if you just think about this circle getting bigger and bigger as you go around, that's kind of how you want this curve to stay the same as this right here. If that makes sense. Add a little bit of yellow to this. Streak some of that yellow in there. Now it's just a matter of kind of whatever you like. If you want it to be a little bit more orange, you could add a little bit more of the yellows and oranges. If you want it more pink, you can add some more pink in. You could also add a little bit of blue to your sky along those edges where the pink meets the canvas edge. There, a little bit of blue would look good. I'm going to streak some yellow over the top of these areas just to dry brush some yellow streaks in there. Soften up those colors and give it a hazy kind of halo effect. I'm not doing a perfect transition of colors. You can kind of work out your blends better. If you want it to be a little bit more perfect, you can blend them a little bit more cleanly, but I want to go ahead and have a few little streaks in there. So now I'm just going back over with this yellow and dry brushing over the top. These paints are almost dry here, so they're not lifting. I'm just able to kind of skim over the top of them with this color. Okay, that's pretty good. Get some of this brighter yellow in right here. All right, that looks pretty good. I think I'm going to let that dry and then we'll work on our sea. Okay, now this is dry. I think I'm going to add just a little tiny bit more white to that center of my sun. Just want to make sure that it's nice and bright. So I'm just adding a little tiny bit of white, and then I'm going to wipe off my brush and just blend that out. Pull some of that paint out along the edges and out into my colors there. Okay, that's good. Just brighten that up, makes it look like it's really glowing. All right, so now I'm going to grab some painter's tape. And you'll want painter's tape because you don't want, if you use regular, well, you could use regular masking tape, but it might lift your paint. So if you've got this painter's tape, I would suggest using that. And now this is where you want to get your horizon line just right. So I'm just going to make sure that my tape goes straight across. Let me check it here, make sure that it looks right. You can always, you're going to go just above where you want the water to start. So that was our horizon line right there. And I'm just making sure that I've got it. I think that's about right. So I'm going to go ahead and press down nice and hard on that. And just tuck those edges back. Just make sure that your tape adheres really well right there where your horizon line is. Okay, so along this edge here, I'm going to do my darkest blue. So I've got Ultramarine Blue, and I'm going to add just a little bit of the magenta to it to make it a little bit of purple. And just a tiny bit of white as well, just to soften that color up. Okay, I'm going to brush that on nice and thick because I want to cover over my colors that have bled down into my sea. Go ahead and brush that on all the way across. Put another layer on there, a little bit darker. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to pick up a little bit more white and just continue down the canvas. I'm working horizontally so that any streaks will look like they're meant to be there. And add more white. Just like we did with the sun, as I introduce a new color, I just kind of go back over my previous layer so that it blends back and forth. Just making sure that I've got good coverage. This is our base color. We're going to have lots of other colors over the top of it, so it doesn't have to be just perfect right now. This is Phthalo Blue, so I'm going to start introducing that. It's a little bit more of a blue-green aqua color, more of your traditional ocean color. Let's start putting that in as well, closer to us. The color on the ocean will be more purple as you get farther away from the shoreline. So that ultramarine blue works well in the distance because it's got more of the purple tones to it. And then this more of a green blue works well in the foreground. That'll just be a natural way to trick your eye without even doing anything but changing the color. It'll already look farther away because it's got that purple in it. Or purple tones, I should say. Just continue to add more paint and working in the horizontal motion to fill in my water. As I go back over, once I get my paint on the canvas, I can go back over some of these other areas and lightly dry brush a little bit of this color in, just to give it a little bit of that color up higher on the canvas so that they blend together. So put the thicker color on first, and then once it's mostly out of your brush, then you can go back over some of these other areas and dry brush them on top. Add a little bit more. Most of this will be covered up, especially this area will be covered by the dock, but it's just, I find it's easier to just paint in solid underneath and then go over the top than to have to paint around things. So if you wanted to, you could have sketched in your dock and then painted around it if you didn't want to waste paint, but I like the layered look, so I like to do lots of overlapping of colors when I do my paintings. Last little bit. There we go. Okay, that looks great. I'm going to go ahead and dry this off and we'll come back. Okay, so this is dry. Now I'm going to put in some of our ocean waves. We're just doing kind of a calm sea, so it's just going to have a few little horizontal lines to indicate some depth, and we'll put in our sun area right here. So I'm going to use a fan brush. This is an old fan brush. It's got stiff bristles. The stiffer ones I think work better for this. If you don't have this, you could use just a flat brush and tap it on its edge. So this has got a little bit wider tip. So I'm going to start out and I'm going to use some of the magenta with some white, and I'm going to grab just a little bit of that blue also, and I'm just going to put in a few highlight waves. And I'm holding my brush so that the tip is horizontal. And I'm just going to very lightly tap in some highlights to the ocean here. Now the ones that are farther away from us are going to be very short and close together. So my lines are going to be shorter and closer together, and as I get down towards the bottom of the canvas, I'm going to do longer lines and they'll be spaced farther apart. Longer and wider lines. And these ones are closer together. As they get up toward the top, they're very close together. You can almost not tell that one starts and the other one stops. They're so stacked close together. Okay, and I'm just going to do a few. This was that Quinacridone Magenta with a little bit of this blue color with the Phthalo Blue. Okay, I'm just putting a few random highlights in my ocean. And then where my sunset color is, I'm going to do a little bit more concentrated lines down there. We're going to have more other colors over the top of this, but I just want to put in a few of this pink first. Okay, it's going to come almost straight down towards you. Alright, so now let's go ahead and do some orange. And I'm going to mix that with the quinacridone and a little bit of that blue just to kind of tone it down. I don't want it to be quite as bright as it was up in the sun. And I'm going to go and do a few of those in these areas. Just a few. Some of these will be covered up, so the ones off to the side here will be the ones that are more visible, so just keep that in mind. And just make sure that you don't you keep your brush strokes horizontal. That way they'll stay looking like ocean waves and not, you don't want to turn your brush too much. I'm just going to do a few really bright highlights along the tip, along the horizon line, and then on this bright section here. I'm doing all the same colors that I did up in our halo, our sunset halo there. Just doing a little bit more concentrated right here where this highlight's going to be. Still want to make sure I've got plenty of that blue showing through. Now I'm going to switch to the cadmium yellow. Do some highlights with the cadmium yellow, just dabbing it along my ocean far away there. And this yellow will be about the same width as the sun, so just kind of go about the same width as that yellow was up there, and then it'll narrow a little bit as we get down closer to the bottom. This area in here is almost solid yellow, because that's where the sun is really reflecting. And then just going to keep on bringing it down. Okay, and I'm going to do a few lines a little bit farther out. Just a few random spots where that sun's catching the yellow color. Okay, and now I'm going to use the brightest yellow. Come just underneath the horizon line. I don't want to go right up next to my tape on this. I want to leave a little bit of that purple blue in there, but I want to kind of bring it around the sides here. Just tapping little lines, pulling a little bit to the side. And as I get down toward the bottom, I'm making my lines a little bit thicker, pressing down a little bit harder on the brush to get thicker dabs. You don't want it to be like a straight funnel, so bring out some of them a little bit out of center, just to help with that illusion. Kind of help keep it from looking like it's all in a straight line, because the sea waves will kind of move that reflection around a little bit. Now I'm getting more of the bright yellow there. I want this to be nice and bright. I'm going back in and just tapping in some straight color here and there. I'm going to use the tip of the brush and just do a few little dots that come out. Just a few little. might go back in, I think, with the brush and do that because it's not quite working with this fan brush the way I want it to. I'll go ahead and put a few of this color. I'm going to go ahead and tone down this color a little bit with our previous colors and put in a few of the highlight streaks with this color. It's just a little bit toned down so that it's not quite so bright. Keeping this brush strokes horizontal. Okay. And now I'm going to grab some white, and I still have these other colors on my brush, so it's not pure white. I'm going to tap in some white highlights where the sun is setting on the ocean. It'll be nice and bright. And kind of zigzag back and forth with this. This area right in here is going to be the whitest and brightest area. So right in here I want a nice big area. Okay, that's looking really good. And then there's a few random highlights with this white color just off to the sides. So just barely touching. I'm just going to put a few little dabs of this here and there. And then I'm going to grab my blue. I still have all these yellows in there, so it's going to make this kind of a blue-green color. This is the Phthalo Blue. I'm going to add some of those highlights. Whoop. Okay, that's a little bit. My brush turned on me a little bit. Make sure that I'm keeping it straight, horizontal. Remember, these ones are going to be wider and thicker down toward the bottom and closer, farther apart. And then as I get up toward the top, I'm going to make them smaller and closer together. Shorter and closer together. So that by the time they get up to this top area here, they're really very close together. I think I'm going to add some ultramarine blue. Do some blue highlights. This is just a matter of layering several different colors here. Now I'm going to go back in with some ultramarine blue. I'm going to add just a little bit of that Quinacridone Magenta. I still have the yellows and things in there, so it's kind of making it a little bit more dull than straight blue. And I still have some white in my brush too. And I'm going to go back in here and do some dark shadow areas. This is darker than our original color because we had originally added a little bit of white to our color when we first put it on. So this will give us a little bit of darker contrast. I'm going to put some of these in underneath where I've done some of my highlight colors. So find your highlights And put some of this dark color right up underneath it. If it's too dark, you can add a little bit of white to soften it up. And sometimes it can just be by itself here. I think I'm going to add some of the blue here that's a little bit brighter, the Phthalo Blue. Okay. And if your lines aren't thin enough with the phthalo with this fan brush, you might go back in with a thinner brush here in a minute and put in some lines with my there we go. Some yellow, and I'm going to add just a tiny bit of blue to make it kind of a green. Add some white to it. Some yellow. I'm just going to bring out some of this yellow in to the sea around this sunset. If I look at the picture, it's really almost solid yellow in these places, so I'm going to just lightly dry brush over the top of some of this, and it'll just add a little bit of that yellow color to my scene and kind of soften up some of that. Okay, it's looking all right. Get some Phthalo Blue here. Just going to put in a bunch of small lines. This area here, especially close to the dock. Most of this is going to be covered up by the dock, but the area that's not, I want to be nice and detailed. So I'm going to put in lots of lines. As you get up towards the top, you get them closer together and shorter. Until you filled in almost over the top of almost all of your original blue color. There'll still be a little bit of it showing, but I want most of that color to be dissolved into this. So this was Phthalo Blue, white, and a little bit of my Cadmium Yellow Light. As I get toward the top, I'm going to start adding some more of the ultramarine blue because I don't want to turn this into too much of the green color up toward the horizon. But I do want to go over most of this area. Just keep on doing this. Kind of tedious. It's a lot of brush strokes, and you'll kind of start, it'll sort of look worse before it looks better. You might think you're not doing it right, but it's just kind of a matter of layering on all these different colors until it starts creating a balance. Shorter brush strokes closer together. Okay, it's starting to look pretty good. I'm going to do some straight ultramarine blue. Up at the top here. Very close together. I'm using the edge of my brush. It's very, I've pushed it flat so that I've got a good chiseled edge there. So I can get some nice fine lines. I'm going to go back down over the top of some of my other blue here, so that the phthalo blue and the ultramarine blue kind of start to mingle a little bit. And then in a couple spots I'm going to go ahead and put a nice dark thick line. And this color will really emphasize a shadow. So this is where we want our darkest shadows to go. I think I'll go back over this with some highlight colors above it so that it really reinforces the idea that this is in shadow. I'm going to bring up some of these shadows right up next to that highlight color. Not over the top, just right up next to it. And then right up the very top here, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I have it nice and dark where that tape is. Very small brush strokes, really close together, stacked really close. Keep it random. You don't want too much of a pattern, obvious pattern in your brush strokes. Clean out my brush. I'm going to grab some of this Quinacridone Magenta and just wash some of that color over the top of my ocean on the sides here. That looks good. Okay, that works. So we've already got all this texture going on. No need to go back over with all these colors. We can just kind of wash now. Change the tone. I think I'm going to try that with some of the yellow too. See what happens. Brush some yellow over. A little bit wet down. starting to look pretty good. We use a little bit of orange too. There we go. A little bit of that orange worked in there. And we're just still working horizontally. Working out good. This is really kind of a dry brush. I don't have a whole lot of water on my brush for this orange. Sort of just dry brushing some color. Just tinting that over the blue. Creating a little bit more of a color story. Okay. Now we're starting to look pretty good. I want a little bit more white in my highlight area. And grab some of that white. It's mixing a little bit with my orange. That's okay. I'm going to grab some of that bright lemon, my bright yellow color too. And let's start dabbing some of that in. Just a little bit of that bright white there. White and some cadmium yellow, and I'm going to go ahead and highlight now around this area here. Add some highlights over the top of my dark areas, just above them, so that they look like there's waves that have shadows. And this is white with my cadmium yellow. Mostly around where my highlight is here. I just want this area to look like it's bleeding some of the light color out from it. Do the same up here, but I'm just going to tap some straight lines in over the top. So we're just about done with the ocean section here, and we're going to start sketching the cabana and the dock and tree. If you want a reference photo that you can trace, if you're not comfortable with drawing this yourself, you can follow the link to my Thankful Art group down in the description and request membership. And in the Files section under Information in the group on Facebook there, you can find the link to the original photo that I used for the inspiration for this painting, and use that to trace out your images. I have traceables available for several of my other acrylic painting videos in that same section as well, so be sure to check those out if you want to try out some of my other acrylic painting videos. Okay, I think we're good. I think I'm happy with that. You can keep playing with it if you want more orange or whatever in your sea colors, but I think that that looks pretty decent. I might do a little bit more of this phthalo blue with white, just a tiny bit more. Just a few little spots. Okay, I think that's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and tear my tape off now. I've got a little bit of bleeding underneath. That's kind of normal. I'm just going to add some cadmium yellow and white. Just tap along that edge there. Just to kind of soften up that horizon line. The white will help make it a little bit more opaque. Just going to tap off. Now if it's in the orange area, just grab a little bit of the orange. I think that's good, but not too bad. Okay, so now let's put in our dock, and I'm going to use some white chalk to sketch that in. So the dock is about if this was our halfway point right here, it's probably another thumb's width down below that. So it'll start right about there. That's our mark. And just go do a line straight across there. Come right up to the middle of the canvas. Do a vertical line there. That'll be the edge of our cabana. And this is the bottom of it. And then our vanishing point is right here for our dock, which is right down the split the dock down the middle. So you can do your 2 lines for your cabana, and then whatever is left, however wide you want your dock to be, which is about a little bit, about half of the size of the cabana. So if you split your cabana into 3 parts and do a line straight across, halfway down, this ends about the same width as the cabana before the end of the canvas. And then our our vanishing point on the horizon line is going to be here. So you're just going to do 2 straight lines from there out in there, and you're going to hit the edge of your cabana there. Wherever your dock starts is where you want this line to merge with, and then it'll continue down. That way you'll get the right perspective on it. And then just erase this section right there. Does that make sense? Then these dock posts are going to come down underneath. There's another line that's right up next to it. It's a little bit shorter. There's a few crisscrossies that go down into the water. This actually comes out a little bit farther, so I'm going to go ahead and do this line a little bit more like that. So that would be a little bit wider on that side too. Okay. Because you want the end of the dock to be about equal with that cabana. And then the roof of the cabana is just above the horizon line, going across, and it kind of angles up in a triangle shape. And at the very top there's an extra little triangle like that. It's not too wide, so it's about as high as it is deep. I might do it a little bit shorter than that. And then there's 2 lines that bisect it. One is right down the middle just about. And then another one below that. And then there's a couple of chairs in there too, but I'm not going to mess with those right now. I'm going to bring that down a little bit. And there's some details on the dock, but we'll paint those in as we go. There's also some pylons that are sticking out from the side of the dock. Make sure that they stay horizontal. Very good. And then over here, our shoreline starts up here, and there's just some rocks right here. And then our tree will come in thin, curve up like that. I want to make it a little bit farther to the side. There we go, a little bit closer to the edge there. Then just find your center of your palm tree, and you're just going to draw some curved lines out from it. Some are going to go straight up, out, and others are going to kind of curve down. That's our basic palm tree. Okay, I think we're good. Let's go ahead and start filling in our silhouette here. Start with some burnt umber. And grab a little bit of this Ultramarine Blue. I'm going to fill in my dock with this color. Kind of a very dark brown with a little bit of a blue tinge to it. The blue is going to really make the brown more like a gray. I'm just going to fill in the whole thing with this color. And I'm not going to worry too much about the edges being perfectly straight, because it's supposed to look like a wooden dock, so it doesn't have to be perfectly even along that edge. I'm just going to make sure I keep in my lines there. And I'm going to fill it in horizontally just like I did the waves, because I'm going to go back in and add just a tiny bit of highlight to these, so some of our brush strokes might show through. Add a little bit more of that ultramarine blue to make it nice and dark. Might even add just a little bit of black. There we go. You could do this with straight black if you wanted it really, really nice and dark, but I kind of wanted to give it a little bit in the picture. It's dark, but it's a little bit more of it's got that golden tones from the sunlight, so it's looking a little bit more brownish orange in my photograph that I'm using. Well, I thought I'd give the silhouettes just a little bit of color. I'm going to use the edge of my brush. Here we go. Nice and dark. Let's go ahead and put in our shoreline here. It's just kind of a rocky area. Okay, grab some more of this brown, add a little bit of black to it. And then I'm going to press my brush flat and use that flat edge to draw my tree trunk. The more you press down, the thicker the trunk will be. You want it to be a little bit thinner as it gets towards the tip, and thicker where it meets the ground. I'll press down a little bit harder as you get towards the rocks there. There we go. And let's put in a few of our pylons here. Let's get pulled down just a little bit. You know what? I'm not happy with that, so what I'm going to do is wipe that off really quick. Since our background's dry, I can wipe off any mistakes real quick if I catch it while it's wet. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Alright, let me switch over to a smaller brush. I'm going to use my number 4 round and grab this burnt umber. And I'm going to add a little bit of red Cadmium Red Light to my burnt umber. Actually, let's add some black to that and see what that has. Yeah, that looks good. Just want a little bit of a orangey brown. I want it to be nice and dark though, so there we go. I'm going to use this color to put in my posts for my cabana. cabana post starts where the dock ends, right there. And then there's kind of a thick, like a little cooler or something right here that sort of sits on top of the dock. Right. A little bit wider than that. Right, then there's two lines. This line here is a little bit thick because it's got two posts that are kind of overlapping. These two are a little bit thinner. Just make sure they go straight up and down. A little bit of a space in between them. If you get them too close together, you can wipe that off. Try again. Add a little bit of water to your paint and it'll be a little bit easier to control. My paint's getting a little dry, so it's getting sticky on me. I'm going to spray it down with some water. And this is going to go down into the water here. Both of these. And then the bottom of the cabana is actually even with this dock, so it's going to go straight across. I'm going to go ahead and bring that dock up just a little bit so that it matches the edge of the cabana. Okay, that's nice and thick line right here. There's going to be a little bit of that showing right on the edge of that. And there's a thick something right here in my picture. And there's a railing that comes across, all the way across. A little bit thinner than the floorboards was. And then another line above that. Goes across, and then this is kind of filled in right there. Alright, now there's some like support posts that come down into the water there. And then this kind of crisscrosses right here. There's the crisscross that kind of comes down like that. And then this whole area is going to be nice and dark, so I'm going to go ahead and take my Ultramarine Blue. Well, I've got Phthalo Blue here, so that'll have to do. Phthalo Blue, and I'm going to go ahead and make a nice dark area underneath my dock in my water, thinning down my paint a little bit. And I'm going to add some water. I want it nice and dark right there so that can't really tell where the dock starts and the shadows start to happen. This is gonna trail some nice dark shadows in there. And then I'm just gonna dab it off just a little bit. I might go back in here in a minute once that dries and add a little bit more of that, but for now I'm just going to let that set. I'm going to do some of this red, put some of that red along the edge of that dock. There and there, give it a little bit of a glow. Just sort of a halo effect. And then I'm going to switch to my flat brush and grab some of my orange and mix that with my burnt umber. Just making an orangey brown color. I'm going to dry brush some streaks on my dock here. I'm going to keep them horizontal. I've got very little paint in my brush and I'm just skimming it over the canvas. Down toward the bottom there, I'm using the full width of the brush, and then as I get toward the top, I'm turning it a little bit to its side so that the slats look narrow. Maybe just a little tiny bit of yellow. There's one that's really bright right in here where the sun is hitting it. Okay, that's good. You don't want it to be too obvious, just a little bit of a highlight. Make it look like there's wood there. Let me go ahead and go back into my shadow area on my water there. Add another layer. There we go. This is dry brushing now. Just a little bit of that Phthalo Blue and Ultramarine Blue mix. This whole area is going to be pretty dark right there. Okay, let's go ahead and put in our pylons with this. Let's use this. You're going to get a little bit longer as you get closer to the shoreline. So these ones farther away are short. And then these ones are a little bit longer as they get. And if you want to, you can use that vanishing point as your guideline, because that's about where they'll be. If you are having trouble picturing where to put them, you can use that as your guide. Draw another line there. Okay, that's good. I'm going to use that and just streak some of this really dark over the top of my dock here to add some more detail. And then this side of the dock, I'm going to switch to my smaller brush. This is a number 2 round, or you could use a liner. There's just a few little details in here that I want to get. Mix up some more of this burnt umber and black. So there's a railing that kind of comes up like that. It's not as high as this, so just keep it kind of low. It comes down like that. And then there's a couple of like little, I think they're lights maybe, that are sticking off the side of the dock here. And get a little bit bigger as they come down toward the bottom. And then there's like a post or something sitting right there on that one. And there's a few random doodads. I don't know what they are, but there's some little shadows in that area. Go. And then let's add our rocking chairs here. It's one of my favorite parts of this picture was there's these 3 little chairs here, so you're going to see the tops of them through the slats. And then bottom's kind of coming out like that. And there's 3 of them. They're not the same, so this one's a little bit lower. This one's got like a back on it or something. And there's a little table right here on this one. Okay, and then I'm just going to go across those boards there so that they look like they're set in there. Cute, huh? Now for the cabana. I'm going to use this small flat brush and hold it at an angle and just think about this being the center, and all the lines are going to converge into that point. Make sense? So we'll just start stacking. Most of it's going to be solid, but the edges will face towards that point right here at the apex of the cabana. So the edges will be a little bit fuzzy, and as they go around, they're going to kind of spoke and change direction so that they're always pointing towards that spot. I'm just using the tip of my brush and letting it kind of be fuzzy along the edges there, so that it looks like grass. And I'm letting some of that undercolor show through too, just slightly, so it'll give it just a little bit more detail. Okay, then there's a little bit of a, like a, I don't know, little section on top that's sort of sitting up there. it sticks out from the sides a little bit. So and it's kind of rounded on top a little bit, and then fuzzy along the sides. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Happy with that. Now let's finish up by finishing our palm tree, and we'll be about done. I'm going to go ahead and switch back over to my small brush here. I'm going to use my black and my ultramarine blue, or my black and my burnt umber. And I'm going to draw a center line through each one of my palm fronds. Do one up here too. Keep them thin. So that's our starting point. And then what I want to do, water down my paint so that it's easier to work with. I'm going to do lots of little teeny tiny brush strokes all close together, pointing out toward the tip. So these ones I'm stacking right up next to each other, pulling down from the line out, and that way you won't have any. Zoom in a little bit. Your line's going to be thickest where it starts, so you want to end out away from the branch so that your thinnest part is on the end of the palm frond. If that makes sense. Just stack several little brush strokes, all going from the tip, middle of that branch out, angled down toward the end. Just keep on layering more and more. Some of them, they're not going to show as much on the other side because they're turned over on themselves. And some of them are going to think about a feather or an arrowhead, you know, like if you were drawing an arrow, how the feathers point out toward the end. That's how these palm fronds grow. Overlap them a little bit so that you just don't want to get it too solid anywhere. You want them to be nice and light and airy looking. And keep a light touch and just work quickly in small brush strokes. These are really fun to do. This one is kind of bent over, So most of its branches or palm fronds are showing underneath. It's going off the edge there. This one is kind of pointing upward. And I'm not going to do too many in here because I don't want to crowd that out and have it be a big blob of black right now. So it's just kind of chaotic enough that you can't really tell what's there, but there's still a little bit of the lighter colors showing through. So I don't want to do my palm fronds all the way down into that area. I want to kind of start them out a little bit farther away from there. And they sort of narrow as they get toward the tip. They start to get a little bit shorter. So these ones that are toward the back and are closer to the tree trunk are a little bit longer. And then as you get toward the tip, they get a little bit smaller. A little bit shorter, I should say. I think that's good. Happy with that? Let me zoom out. See, I might make this leaf a little bit longer. I feel like he needs to curve out a little bit farther. There we go. Okay, that's good. I might do a little bit of like sometimes they have like a little bushy area right here where they have coconuts or whatever grows on these palm trees. So I'm going to just do a little thick area right there. Just make sure there's something going on right there. I think that's good. Right, and you can always go back in and add a little bit more highlights in there, or, you know, tweak it however you want to. But I think we are done. Hope you've enjoyed this. If you do this project, I'd love to see it. You can share it with me on my Thankful Art page on Facebook. The link to that is in the description below. Please check out my other videos. If you click on my picture and subscribe, it'll take you to my channel, and you can see all the other videos that I have. Thanks so much for watching today. I'll see you next time.